Hello, this is Dr. Atta for DestroySocialAnxiety.com, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about public speaking. We have, I have given an example of exposure therapy for situations in which involve, fear of flying. And today I wanted to discuss the available options for public speaking. And the method is quite similar, but before we go into details, I just wanted to reflect a little bit on the issue of public speaking and, talk about the fact that it's a very common fear for both men and women. And it's hard to find someone who does not have the issue with public speaking in general. So first of all, why do we have that fear? Because on the surface, again, it appears that it's not something we should be afraid of. Let's imagine a situation in which we go for a speech, public speech. The ideal scenario is we are not well prepared. It helps that the speeches on the subject we are not totally comfortable with, and we go in front of 200, 300 people or even 50 people, and we make a speech. And before that happens, we have all the same symptoms of fear, of anxiety that we have in other situations, social situations, of fear-inducing situations. And on the surface, it seems like there is no reason for that to happen whatsoever. Even if we have the worst speech in the world, we're going to be booed. There are really no repercussions for that. There are, small exceptions in which importance of speech means something. For example, if you are making a major sales pitch and it doesn't go well, you may lose a contract, or you may not get you may not be able to sell what you're pitching, but that typically is not the case for majority of people who have a problem with public speaking. The typical situation is that there is nothing to gain or to lose. The speech is typically to people to educate them about something. The expectations on the part of the audience are minimal, and yet the fear of speaking is reportedly comparable to the fear of dying. And the question is, why is that? Why such a simple thing as speaking in front of a group of people is so anxiety-provoking? There are many theories on this. Some make it individual, some associated with some traumatic event in your childhood. But because it's so universal and applies to both genders, I would say equally. In fact, I suspect that it's a little bit more prevalent with women than men. The issue is there any common biological theme to it? And my belief is there is. And the idea comes back again from the ancient times when we were in a herd, and if we engaged in behavior that was perceived by the group as negative and something that is unacceptable, the group, the herd, would exclude us from the herd. And that is a very risky proposition, because if we're excluded from the herd, we're all alone. And since human beings are not typically very well prepared to deal with the environment alone, our strength is our brains and our ability to be creative, but we are, as animals, as mammals, are quite weak. So being excluded from the herd essentially meant death. So therefore, when we speak in front of the big group, we want to be accepted, and we want to come across as perfect as possible. And if we are not, if we fail in this endeavor, biologically, we assume that we are going to be excluded from the herd, and therefore we are going to be sentenced to death. Therefore, giving a public speech is, like, again, questions of life and death. And it doesn't make any sense, obviously, nowadays, because there is no more exclusion from the herd. The worst that's going to happen is people will boo you, and you are going to be remembered as the worst speech maker in the history of the world, but there are no consequences to that whatsoever. We go on with our lives as we did. We continue to keep our job. We continue to have our family life. We continue to be able to make money. There is absolutely no practical consequence to failing at the public speaking. And yet, our ancient programming creates that fear. So, what are the options for public speaking? Again, it's the same concept as with the issue of fear of flying. We start small, okay? We want to create a situation in which it's a little bit uncomfortable, but to the point where it's bearable, preferably in a group of people that you know, and you are not afraid of criticism as much. You start with a small presentation. You expand it to the point where it begins to be a bigger group until you tolerate it. You go on to the even bigger group, and eventually you are being able to speak in a regular large crowd. This is the concept of Toastmasters. There is an organization that is focused on public speech, and the idea is that the more you practice public speaking, the more comfortable you become. My position is that in addition, it would be useful to create an overshoot experience, and that is create a situation in which it would be ridiculously difficult or ridiculously unusual to give a speech in a very hostile and unpleasant environment. That is useful if you can create that scenario, because it takes you back one notch further than the typical experience of public speaking. And this is very difficult to do. There are certain tools that people use. There is no ideal situation, but what you want to create is a situation in which it's not only difficult to give a speech in front of it, but it makes it very difficult, and it's done on purpose. So in other words, you, for example, purposely put yourself in a position where you definitely are going to fail with your speech. Not only maybe you're going to fail, but definitely going to fail. For example, by giving a speech on a topic you really know very little about and giving it in front of experts, and possibly you're going to get booed and taken off the stage and going through the whole experience. It's not easy to do, and obviously it has to be done properly, as you have to be prepared for it. But if you can control the process, if you can decide that this is what you want to do, and you will be prepared for the possible outcome, that part, the overshoot, is extremely important in creating a comfort zone, so that you can go from that experience a little bit back and then feel totally comfortable in a regular public speaking. The trick is to get to the point where overshoot does not create trauma, because if you do it incorrectly, you may end up in a situation when you become completely traumatized and you do not want to engage in that experience at all. That's why the slow graduation process and persistence and repeat of the processes is crucial, and creating a situation where you are able to manage it is the skill itself, and that is the ideal approach to the public speaking issue. Again, some of the elements of the treatment exist, but it is my belief that not all of them are there, and the concept of going gradually from the point of slow exposure to the extreme exposure, the overshoot in front of live and in a live environment, is not that common to encounter. And that will be it for today's video, and I welcome any questions if anybody has on our YouTube channel, and hopefully that will help me to focus on the topics that people are interested in. Thank you.